I just did a previous video, I'll link this one to it, about my trip to Italy, and I forgot to really get into the details of my delusion when I was in Italy. It's kind of interesting because it has to do with my parentage. See, I was convinced that I wasn't my parents' child, which is partially true. I'm not my Fred Brandlin's daughter. I'm not his daughter. I'm Bill Pugh's daughter, who was a friend at the lake, Cuca Lake. My parents knew the Pughs, and he fathered me. Anyway, when I was in Italy, I believed I was Pope John the 23rd. I believed I was his illegitimate child, so it was kind of convoluted. Kind of a convoluted imaginary parentage. So, but I thought that because I thought it had to do with I had this delusion, or at least thoughts, that somebody had carved out the gold out of the Nazi concentration camp teeth. And actually, I thought my mother had done that, but I thought my mother was another person. I thought my mother was somebody else, but it turns out June Brandlin was my mother. But she might have carved the gold out of the teeth, because anything's possible at U of R. You know, she was working as a lab tech. Maybe she carved the gold out of the teeth in the night, not in the night, but as another part of her job. Who knows? I have to ask my guardian angel. He says yes, she did. So, that is, so I had this weird thought, who's my parents, which is a good question. Now, I know I'm told I'm some kind of Russian princess. That's what was told me by a man I knew in Canandaigua. He called me the Russian princess. His name was Ron Roach. He was a ham radio operator, and he had a little thing for me. Oh, I never told you about Ron Roach. That's another man I interacted with. I guess it's only 2 minutes into the video I could talk about Ron. Ron was from Canandaigua, and I met him at Mass, and he was taken with me, and we dated a few times, right? And took me to a play, maybe out to dinner. He was older than me, and I didn't really want to go. I first met him in Canandaigua after I just got divorced, and I didn't. He sort of implied, you know, like, you'd be financially taken care of when I die, my trust would go immediately to you, type of thing. He didn't say it in those words, but I felt like he was trying to buy me, and I didn't really have romantic feelings for him, so I didn't want to go from one relationship of not having romantic feelings for a spouse to another relationship not having romantic feelings for a spouse. But Ron and I knew each other over the years, and passed away about 3 or 4 years ago on the Feast of St. Francis, October 4th. And I never sent a card to the family or anything like that, because I felt kind of guilty, because I had talked to him 2 weeks before he died and asked him for money, because I didn't think I could work, and I had to wait for my disability to go in. He had been bragging he had $20,000 extra in his account that he didn't even put there, that the bank had made a mistake. So I was like, do you owe me $20,000? And he said, get back to work. It's kind of not what I would expect. But anyway, that was Ron, and Ron was a ham radio operator, and I had delusions about him with the Alphabet Murders, actually. But he was a principal up in Rochester at that time, and would have had access to people who knew, because the 3 girls were Catholics. I thought maybe there was a connection in my mind, but I've never consulted with my guardian angel to see if that's true, or just a fantasy or a vision or what. But So that was a little bit more about my delusions, about who my parents were, but it turned out my father wasn't my father, so it wasn't that big of a delusion. And thanks for listening. Thank you.